Being a royal isn't always quite like the Princess Diaries, as you may have learned if you followed any royal family news, particularly the contentious kind. In fact, if you did pay attention in your global history lesson, you might recall learning about certain royals who had some pretty unfortunate outcomes. For instance, a monarch might occasionally resign from their position as head of state without engaging in a bloody revolution. Then of course there are also members of royal families who go broke in an old-fashioned manner. So what royals and royal families have fallen from riches to rags, and just how exactly did it happen? Well, without further ado, let's get right into it. Number 6. King Moshoeshoe II of Lesotho, $500,000. After several decades of dynastic control, several of the royals on this list experienced heavy financial losses. But for the first ruler of Lesotho, King Moshoeshoe II, it wasn't like that at all, for once he had his crown, he found it incredibly difficult to keep it. The sad tale of Moshoeshoe's rise and then subsequent fall from glory stands out. Moshoeshoe studied at Corpus Christian College in Oxford, England when he was younger. His reign as the first king of Lesotho started in 1966 when Basutoland, a British colony, gained its independence. However, he was the son of the paramount chief of Basutoland. He then attempted to expand the monarchy's authority, which the constitution forbade, so Prime Minister Lebuwa Jonathan prevented him from succeeding by placing him under house arrest. Moshoeshoe was sent into exile after Jonathan's administration was overthrown in a coup, and he was removed when he attempted to hold democratic elections. When he was denied entry to his previous royal palace, he then left for England. Democratic elections were finally held, however, after another military coup overthrew the previous administration. Moshoeshoe reclaimed his kingdom with the aid of his son and Nelson Mandela of up to a net worth of around $500,000, but sadly he was killed in a vehicle accident just 1 year later in 1996. Moshoeshoe was apparently fond of the outdoors, in contrast to some rulers who were known for relaxing in opulent places surrounded by finery. He had a property where he maintained goats, sheep, and cattle, in addition to his passion for horses and hunting. Number 5. Several Indian royal families, over $1 million. India was once split into numerous smaller kingdoms before becoming the one nation that it is today. So, the Indian royal dynasty's wealth and influence have diminished due to the essential dissolution of these kingdoms. There are those who are descended from Tipu Sultan, the Mysorean king who perished in combat with the British in 1799. About 100 of his descendants now reside in Kolkata, where they toil hard to make ends meet. One of those royal descendants confessed that he now drives a rickshaw and sells kerosene. The letter stated that they destroyed their health, chasing after government officials and battling legal battles to realise appropriate recompense for their rightful dues. The Daily Mail reports that in 2013, Sultana Beguma, the great-granddaughter-in-law of Bahadur Shah Zafar II, at the time worth over $1 million, the last Mughal emperor of India, now resides in a slum in Kolkata. When her husband passed away, the mother of 6 battled to make ends meet while receiving an $80 monthly pension and what little money she could make making women's apparel. There's also the terrible story of Brajaj Kshatriya Birbal Chamupati Singh Mahapatra of Tigriya, who ended up dying in a mud hut after living in a splendid palace and having a net worth of over $10 million. He once had access to more than 24 automobiles and even more servants. However, after India attained independence, his finances took a dive for the worst, and the last prince of the nation was dependent on charity until he passed away in 2015. Number 4. King Edward VIII of the United Kingdom, $1.1 million. King Edward VIII, one of the British royal family's most scandalous members in history, abdicated the throne and gave up the life of luxury that came with it in 1936 so that he could be with his divorced American girlfriend, Wallis Simpson. Fans of the Netflix series The Crown may be quite familiar with this controversial royal family member. According to Vogue, Edward's resignation caused him to lose the title His Royal Highness and be awarded the lesser title of the Duke of Windsor. Since Edward would need his brother's consent, the new king, to return, and since returning posed the risk of causing social turmoil, he and Simpson left the United Kingdom and moved to France. Despite having a strong ambition for a government position in England, Edward spent most of his days without work and renting a home in France. His decision to flirt with Nazism, which was strongly discouraged for obvious reasons, further complicated his efforts to return to his home country. Besides that, Edward's main worry when he abdicated the royal crown was money. It appears that he drastically misrepresented his assets, claiming they were only worth around $121,000, while his fortune was actually worth more than $1.4 million in order to get a bigger settlement from his brother. According to Forbes, his trickery allowed him to get annual payments of what would be the equivalent of $1 million today, and he received the equivalent of $10 million for his frank book. Number 3. Marie Antoinette, $28 million. We'd be remiss if we didn't mention the most famous queen to lose her money in all history. Marie Antoinette, of course, lost a lot more than just access to the royal treasury. Antoinette could well be one of the people from her day who has been misrepresented the most. According to Britannica, it's far from the historical truth that she ever uttered the words "let them eat cake" or that her huge spending habits contributed to the nation's economic collapse. Nevertheless, throughout the French Revolution, she came to represent the affluent elite's contempt for the lives of the underprivileged, and this view of the queen is still prevalent today. Also, to be honest, Marie Antoinette was a very extravagant spender. According to a signed notebook that was placed up for auction by Christie's auction house, the queen's planned household budget in 1781 was over $915,000, which is nearly $18.5 million in today's money. Interestingly, the young queen, who rose to fame as Madame d'Efficy, loved to dress opulently in silk and jewels. She occasionally went over her wardrobe budget, which would be $3.6 million today, by as much as a factor of 2. Hundreds of nobles were killed during the infamously brutal French Revolution by revolutionaries. As a result, King Louis XVI and Queen Antoinette were ultimately apprehended. Also, the couple's young son, Louis Charles, was imprisoned and eventually killed by the guillotine while the couple was in jail, so there really isn't a happy ending to speak of here. Number 2. King Constantine II of Greece, $50 million. You need to go no further than King Constantine II of Greece for a contemporary riches to rags tale with some rather stylish rags. In 1964, Constantine was a gorgeous 24-year-old monarch who had recently wed Anne-Marie, a stunning Danish princess. But just 3 years later, chaos reigned as the royal family was driven into exile as a result of a coup. Constantine and other Greek royals had their palaces, titles, possessions, and passports all revoked. Constantine even had to ask a valet for money after a counter-coup attempt failed so they could fuel their escape vehicle. His family's destroyed property was ultimately estimated to be worth between $500 million and $550 million. But over the following few decades, Constantine largely lived in England, even hosting balls that were attended by other royals. His Hampstead property, which had 13 bedrooms and sold for over $13 million in 2013, shows that his exile didn't totally reduce him to penury. However, he later chose to return to Greece and live as a commoner, so he placed that mansion up for sale. And if you think that that's just ridiculous, his own words were that if you take a look at Greek history, all Greeks in exile yearn to return home. It runs in the family. Funny enough though, it was actually his wife who was the one that pushed the hardest for this. Number 1. The Romanovs, $45 billion. Of course, the terrible demise of the Romanovs, the former Tsars of Russia, is another well-known tale of a fallen royal family. Most probably you've heard of the myths and rumours surrounding Princess Anastasia or watched the animated fairy tale movie based on them. The Romanov family, which was the final royal dynasty in Russia, was reportedly worth a staggering $45 billion when they were overthrown by the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. This was undoubtedly a very unjust scenario to the rest of the nation, but the Romanovs' overthrow was carried out in an almost unfathomably violent manner. The family, which included Tsar Nicholas II, his wife Alexandra, and their 5 children, were abducted and kept captive in Siberia by Bolshevik revolutionaries. Later, the bayonet and firing squad put them to death in the home's basement. DNA testing on the family's remains showed that everyone in the immediate family was slain that day, despite persistent allegations that one or more family members were able to flee the execution. But forgetting that, the family is also the subject of another mystery. They had a huge collection of jewels and other riches, but some of it is still missing. The book titled The Last Act of a Tragedy has a list of some of the other things that were also seized and documented. These consist of several exquisite furs, silver surfaceware, gold chains, and trinkets. Well, anyway, some of these royal families didn't deserve their fall from grace, but what can we do? Anyway, what do you think of these royals, and whose fall do you think was the most tragic? Be sure to let us know down below in the comments. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so that you never miss an upload. Remember, this is where we discuss the famous, rich, and powerful. Thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.